On a special draft night edition of Locked On Raptors, JaKobe Walter is the man for Toronto at 19. Plus, pick 31 looms. Will the Raptors actually make their pick? It's all coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to a late night trying not to wake up my neighbors edition of Locked On Raptors on the heels of the first round of the NBA draft. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Very Bad website that we all scrolled incessantly tonight. You can also find me over on Instagram, or the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Great place to be tonight. Lots of draft talk. You want to jump in before round 2 tomorrow if you haven't already done that. We had a nice little live voice chat hanging out there to react to the pick 2. Wonderful stuff. Appreciate all of those who came and hung out. And if you haven't joined yet, again, link in the description, free to join. Would love to see you there in the Discord. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend on the audio side of things. We're on YouTube as well. Subscribe over there so you never miss an episode. It's much appreciated when you go and support the show. And with that, let's dive on into today's episode. It's going to be a short one here, recording late, and with there being only 16 hours between the first round of the draft and the second round, wanted to just get something quick out here to react to the pick of JaKobe Walter at 19 for the Toronto Raptors, the 6'5", 6'6"-ish guard from Baylor, the Big 12 freshman of the year. We'll get in his game, and the pick that I've very much come around on big time in the hour or so since the pick was made. Plus, we'll talk about pick 31, kind of power rank the guys left who the Raptors might take with the first pick tomorrow, and get into all of the possibilities for them trading the pick, which we've not really heard a whole lot of scuttlebutt about, but maybe we'll start to get some reporting, perhaps even during today's show. Anyway, with that, let's get rolling here as we react to the pick of JaKobe Walter at 19. Look, JaKobe Walter was not someone that I had, a super big affection for during the lead up to the draft. Of course, all these caveats of me being an idiot and not being an actual draft expert, et cetera, apply. But for me, JaKobe Walter felt like someone I wasn't going to be super enthused by the pick. Just because I was hoping for size. I really wanted big wings. I wanted big men. That was kind of my whole thing coming into this draft. And with DaRon Holmes sitting there at 19, I was a little disappointed when DaRon Holmes was not the pick. But doing a little bit more sort of revisiting JaKobe Walter and his tape and, revisiting some of the scouting reports, I am kind of keen on the idea of JaKobe Walter for this Raptors team going forward. Tail of the tape on JaKobe Walter for the uninitiated, you probably know by now. But again, a 6'5" guard out of Baylor, won Big 12 freshman of the year this past season, was an all Big 12 player as well. Averaged 14.5 points, 4.4 boards, 1.4 assists, 1.1 steals, and just 0.2 blocks per game. Did not shoot efficiently this season. Just a 37.6% field goal mark, 42% on his twos, shot 34% on 6.3 3-point attempts per game. That's 6.3 threes to just 4.7 twos attempted. The man loves to get up triples. And I do think the 34% kind of is a bit of a lie here with sort of the upside of JaKobe Walter as a shooter. You watch him play, you watch him fly around screens for Baylor, you watch him and the sort of confidence he has on the catch and shoot, the sort of the form he has. He's going to be an NBA shooter. I feel pretty good about that. And I don't think that was ever really a question. It felt like JaKobe Walter's shooting was the thing you could bank on. It seems like the questions come in with the other parts of his game and kind of rounding it all out. And I don't think I was super sold on the idea of his defense necessarily during the draft process. And frankly, like JaKobe Walter is not someone I spent a ton of time examining because I thought he was going to go a lot higher in the draft than he ended up going. He was projected anywhere from, 8 to 14 in a lot of places. And so he's not someone I spent a ton of time on. And again, I think because he's a 6'6" wing, for a team that has RJ Barrett, I think needs a little bit more length and size from the wings. He just wasn't someone I thought was going to be someone they'd go and target. But that said, he does do a thing the Raptors have needed for years, and that is shoot 3-pointers. And he does it a ton. And I do think, like I said, the 34% in college probably undersells what he's going to be as a shooter. The volume is absolutely there. That's just as important an indicator as anything else. 79% free throw shooter as well. All of the indications, all of the scouting intel suggests that he's going to be a very good three-point shooter in the NBA at the very least, and that is pretty cool. The defense with him, that's going to be, the sort of next thing to layer in. I don't think you can expect a whole lot from Walter as far as like on-ball creation or anything like that, at least not out of the gate. But I do think, as just like, that the words thrown around all the time, 3-and-D, that does feel like a thing that's within the possibility, the realm of possibilities and outcomes here for JaKobe Walter. You hear a lot of Kentavious Caldwell Pope thrown around as a name, and he's a guy who came up on the episode we did the day of the draft with Rich Stamen, talking about guys who might end up on teams that, just sort of win championships, the guys who float around and appear on multiple championship teams. Who's the most likely guy to end up there? I don't think I said JaKobe Walter. I don't think Rich did either, but like he is certainly in the conversation of that type of player in this draft where he just does the things good teams need. In theory, if everything works out, he shoots threes at a high volume, and it's not just stationary catch and shoot stuff. You can actually run your offense around the idea of moving him off of actions, very similar to Grady Dick. I think we're going to be in for a lot of fun with Scotty Barnes, JaKobe Walter, Grady Dick, second units, and those guys flying around. I think that's fascinating. I think that's going to be a ton of fun. The defense with Walter, his wingspan is 6'10". There should be a good defender in there somewhere. Wasn't great as a freshman, but he was a 19-year-old in the Big 12. Like, I don't think you can expect him to be an incredible defender out of the gate. He had a big offensive burden for that Baylor team as well. And so I think you look at the tools more than you look at maybe the sort of performance on defense in his freshman season. And I do think the tools are there for a very good sort of 1-2-3 defender, I think, in the NBA, who can sort of scale down and guard smaller point guards, probably has the quickness and the sort of agility once he kind of hones things and refines his defensive footwork and things like that. Probably has the tools to stay in front of, more slick, quick, fast guards. Could be a valuable thing with Emmanuel Quickley as a potential long-term backcourt partner for him as well, who, I think is a good rotational defender, but maybe not the strongest or stoutest point of attack guy. Walter could be a really nice compliment to him. The idea of a Walter Quickley backcourt long-term is pretty interesting. If RJ Barrett could figure out how to defend, that's another thing here that's, sort of a question is, does JaKobe Walter do enough to bolster the wing defense to help insulate RJ Barrett, who was so bad defensively as a Raptor last season? Obviously, things get a lot easier if RJ Barrett can just be a good defender and figure things out. And, he's 23 years old. There's plenty of runway for him to go and figure that out, too. He's had moments in his career of looking slightly above average. We'll see if he can get back to that. But back to Walter, if the defense comes along, all of the sort of scouting reports, Kevin O'Connor praised him for just kind of being a dude who really kind of digs into the stance, revs up the teammates, super high energy, super high motor type of guy. You love that. I think that's an awesome thing to have. And ultimately, if JaKobe Walter hits and sort of becomes the 3-and-D guard who can, hang around and guard a few positions on the perimeter, that's a really valuable player to have. He's never probably going to be a star for this team or anything like that. There's not a ton that suggests there's like creation upside here. But, second side attacking, getting to the rim. He's an athletic guy. That could happen. I wasn't like through the moon excited with the pick when it came down, but digging into it a little bit more over the last hour or so, and just sort of thinking about how he fits into the Raptors' plans next season and going forward, I think I'm perfectly all right with the pick of JaKobe Walter, and happy to be even more thrilled down the line if things really hit. Of course, the Raptors front office, like better or worse, they're pretty good at drafting. They seem to have a pretty good handle on things. Walter's not a guy they worked out reportedly, but that doesn't preclude you from drafting a guy, obviously. And I think, the Raptors have a pretty good handle on how to draft and sort of what they're looking for. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on this one for sure. Walter, at the very least, seems like a pretty high floor player, even if he's not the most exciting and sexy upside player or anything like that. And I think that's perfectly fine. I'm all cool with floor players and not having to go for super high upside swings that are probably not going to actually pan out anyway. Come back on the other side really quick, and we'll get into the pick 31, which still looms. We'll have plenty more talk on JaKobe Walter, get into more of the specifics of where he'll fit into the rotation next season and beyond on future episodes. I'm going to get Cam Stewart from Locked On Baylor to talk about his impression of JaKobe Walter, watching him this past season with the Bears as well. So that's to look forward to. But we got a second round to talk about. The Toronto Raptors are on the clock. Who's left on the board? Who should they be looking at? We'll get to that to round out this quick little bonus late night Locked On Raptors for you in just 1 second. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to go and buy tickets for the sporting events, the concerts, the comedy shows that you want to go to this summer. And yeah, Major League Baseball going strong. Your Toronto Blue Jays are not very good, but that means tickets are more affordable, baby. If you want to go see the Blue Jays, obviously summertime coming around, it's a great thing to go and do. Maybe you take the family, maybe you just go with some friends. I love to go to a game and just sit down and talk to my friends and barely watch the game. It's like one of my favorite things to go and do. You can do that with Game Time and get yourself some great seats. You get last minute deals, save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals and select seats ahead of the game or event. And of course, you have seat views, all-in pricing, no surprise fees at checkout, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets for cheaper in the same spot somewhere else. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, back out of here for a few minutes to quickly run through the board that's left for the Toronto Raptors at number 31. Yeah, God, it's late. That's the pick they're at, 31. Of course, we don't know if they're going to use this pick. As Dan Tolzman said when he spoke to the media yesterday, there are going to be plenty of calls that come in through the Toronto Raptors switchboard over the course of the next 16 hours or so. And it's it's very possible we see Bruce Brown, who was not traded, maybe packaged with 31 in some kind of deal. We have no idea. There's been very little reporting on exactly what's going on there. I'm sure that will ratchet up over the course of the next 16 hours as teams collect themselves after the first round, reassess their boards, decide how much they want to go in for a guy. Maybe Bruce Brown doesn't get traded. We can examine all of that later on if he doesn't. But yeah, plenty of stuff could go down. If the Raptors keep the pick, look, this is the beauty of being at 31. Guys fall through the first round who probably should have been going in the first round all the time. And the Raptors have a shot here to go and pick one of those guys. And so I just want to go through I was going to do a top 5. I think I have a top 7 of guys I'd like to see the Raptors go and pick at 31 if they hang on to the pick. And look, I still think the Raptors, with the pick of Walter, my one concern with it is they still are in dire need of backup point guard play. They're still in need of big, long wings, and they're still in need of big men. And they didn't address with any of those things with Walter. Walter fits into the wing thing a little bit, but I do think he tilts more guard long term. I think sort of a fit next to Emmanuel quickly in the backcourt is sort of the grand long-term vision here. We'll see what that means for RJ Barrett and where he slots in. Again, his defense, that's a big swing skill for RJ Barrett. We'll see how that progresses, but I do think wings and just size and length and defensive versatility are still a thing this team needs. Few guys who might check that box, scratch that itch, if you will, and also a few guys who maybe fit into that sort of backup point guard spot. There's a lot of those guys left right now. Tyler Kolek's on the board. I'm not going to go him as one of my top 7 guys here. I've kind of softened on him a little bit, but Tyler Kolek is certainly there. Another guy is Jamal Sheed, who from Houston, who figures to be one of the best defensive guards in the league once he joins the NBA. Is the offense there at all? That's the big question. He's not going to be on my list of the top guys I want to see, but there are lots of potential guards. There's some interesting sort of overseas guys to look at too. Juan Nunez is a guy who I know a lot of people like. Not going to be on my board either here. AJ Mitchell from UC Santa Barbara is another. Lots of potential dudes. Let me get into just my quick off the dome top 7 who I think are just the best fits, best values for the Raptors at 31 tomorrow. Number 1, Kyle Filipowski. Didn't go in the first round. I thought he would have been a reasonable pick at 19 for the Toronto Raptors. I don't think the fit is perfect. I think I would have liked a guy like DeRon Holmes, who has a little bit more sort of rim protection to him, a little bit more ability to kind of play in all the different iterations of the Raptors front court. But I do think Kyle Filipowski could do some of that. 7-footer, has a lot of ball skill. One of the more skilled big dudes in this draft, maybe the most purely skilled big guy in this draft. The defense is the question, but I think at 31, a guy who's 7 feet tall, who can handle the ball, like legitimately handle the ball, put it on the deck, make stuff happen with the ball in his hands. That's a tough thing to pass up at 31. He's, again, defensive questions abound. Can he hang at the 5 on defense? Will Kelly Olynyk, Kyle Filipowski lineups have any shot of surviving? That maybe is not so much a thing that you can count on. I'm really curious to see how they go about addressing the backup big spot. Maybe it's Filipowski. I would not have a problem if Kyle Filipowski were the guy. I think he's just the best guy left on the board they can go and take. You figure out the fit later. Yeah, a lot of people compare him to Kelly Olynyk. You don't want to have maybe two of the samey type player on the team, but also you can't be drafting now with Kelly Olynyk in mind when he's not going to be on the team 2 years, 3 years down the road. As much as I'm going to enjoy him being on the team for the next couple of seasons. So Kyle Filipowski, that is number 1 for me. Number 2 is Johnny Furphy. Maybe a surprise he slipped through the first round. And I know the instant reaction is going to be, oh, the other Kansas white guy, that they're getting Grady Dick again. No, he's a different player than Grady Dick. Way more interesting athlete, above the rim kind of finisher, dunks all over the place. And as I talked about a couple days ago, I guess last week when I talked about Furphy, I think there's some defensive potential there. Like he seems to have a pretty good set of instincts for how to play defense. Again, he's a really nice athlete, about 6'8", pretty bouncy. I think there's some pretty decent wing defense, help side defense in there somewhere with Furphy. And I would not be upset if he were the pick at 2. Again, just like talent-wise, might be as good a value as you can get at 31. Then we get into some more niche picks. I don't know if anyone's really going to have these guys. I know a lot of people are really fond of Tyler Smith. I just don't know if Tyler Smith does enough to me outside of shoot threes to make him worth a pick. I just don't know where he gets on the floor in the NBA. He's not a good defender in space. Don't think he's big enough to be a center. It's a tricky one. I just Tyler Smith is kind of a no-go for me, although I know he's one of the more highly projected guys left on the board. Number 3 for me, this is where I go and address the backup point guard spot. KJ Simpson out of Colorado, super duper productive college player, older player, might be able to step in and give you credible backup minutes kind of right away. And was like probably the best player on a team that had Tristan da Silva and Cody Williams at Colorado this past season. He's a good player. He's a little bit undersized, about 6'1", 6'2", but I think just give me an adult who can run point. I'm pretty all right with that, just as a concept. KJ Simpson's number 3 for me. Number 4, Oso Ighodaro out of Marquette, 6'10", has like a really interesting mix of some playmaking touch, averaged 3 assists a game for Marquette this year, rebounded at a pretty nice rate, scored 13 points a game. And all you read about him is that just he's like a really cerebral, smart player. I think at 6'10", that's the type of guy you could maybe take to hope to fill in some backup big minutes, play with Kelly Olynyk. He is not a shooter, did not make any threes in his 4 years at Marquette. And so that's the limiting factor there for him, but it's the 31st pick in the draft. You can't have all of the things you want here. Kyle Filipowski, very good offensive player, credible 3-point shot. The questions are on defense. Ighodaro, I think, offers a little bit of defensive pop and some playmaking from like the short roll and things like that. That could be kind of fun. So he's number 4 for me. Number 5 is Nikola Jurisic, the 6'8" wing who plays for Mega over in Serbia right now. Seemed like a bit of a hot name and had some first round helium at some point in this draft lead up. Kind of fell off lately. But a 6'8" skilled wing who's been playing in Mega for 4 years, gotten better every single year he's been over there as well. This past season's averaged 14 points a game, 3.5 assists, 2.7 boards. Not a great finisher or 3-point shooter yet. There's a lot of growth to be done for Jurisic, but he's 20 years old, one of the younger guys you could go with on this pick. He's on my list. And then Bobby Klintman, number 6 for me. I don't love Bobby Klintman. I kind of don't know what he does. I said in the Locked On Raptors Discord earlier that he's the Seinfeld of basketball players. He's a basketball player who does nothing. That's not maybe entirely fair, obviously, but I just the tools are there. He's 6'10". He moves well. I'm just not sure that it all comes together to be a guy who can go and like play NBA minutes necessarily. But I think it's worth maybe a shot at 31 for Bobby Klintman. And then Adam Bona, the center out of UCLA, the undersized center, 6'8", 6'9", No 3-point shooting juice there. I would prefer Iguodala over him just because of size. Very similar in terms of makeup and sort of where they're going to operate on the floor, switchability, things like that. I just think I'd rather the size and Iguodala. The Raptors need more talls. That's the thing. Is like my one disappointment with the Walter pick is this team needs more tall players, and so they don't have that just yet. They got to go find it some way, shape, or form, whether it's via trade, free agency, or the draft tomorrow with pick 31. But that's the kind of run of guys I'm looking at right now. Very informally. There could be other guys who I wake up in the morning and say, I want that guy instead. But Filipowski, Furphy, Simpson, Iguodala, Jurisic, Clinton, Bona, kind of my top 7 there. And we'll see. It's wild. Will they take the pick at all? Who knows? We'll have to see over the course of the next little while here. 15, 16 hours from the time I'm recording this until the Raptors are on the clock again. And we will be there tomorrow to talk about it. Looking forward to it. We'll have plenty of shows over the next few days, and I'm going to wrap things up before I wake up any more neighbors and ruin the sleep of the small children who are in the house next door. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again Thursday night, Friday morning. We'll read it and sort of see what happens. But either way, thanks so much for tuning in to this little bonus episode of Locked On Raptors. Subscribe, follow, rate, review, tell a friend, etc., etc. And we'll have plenty more coverage on Walter, on the Raptors pick at 31. If they make it, any trades that go down, it'll all be there here on the show over the next little while. So thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you on the next time I turn the podcast mic on. We'll see when that is, Thursday night or Friday morning. Thanks so much for hanging. Bye-bye. Ooh.